I'm Scott Winter, Managing Director, and I'm joined here by some other directors, Art Malone and Stuart McClure are here, and our supporting brokerage, Invested Equities, where is he, JT? I'll throw in that we're based in Brisbane, so I'll have to show in the Sunshine State. Sydney's great, Perth's brilliant, but Brisbane is absolutely terrific. But I'll tell you what, Sydney's turning it on today, apart from this a bit of smog, but anyway, that's fine. As Jane said, we are Critical Mineral Group, slightly different, but probably parallel to some of the presentations around lithium and those type of deposits. Vanadium is a parallel product that is really targeted at the battery storage market, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second, but probably what I do want to do is come back to what Ray said up front around people, and I think that's really important. The business to date has been really focused on producing a JORC resource and really defining that really well. The Linfield deposit, which is our vanadium deposit, sits up in Julia Creek. So those that know Queensland sort of go to Mount Isa and go east 300 kilometres. There's not a lot out there. There's kangaroos, there's cows, and then there's the Toolabuck, which is historically been known as an oil shale, but right in the oil shale, which is now sort of out of favour, is vanadium. But the beauty about this is it is a terrific resource, and again I'll talk about that. But back to the people, you know, I'm 6 weeks under the desk at the moment, and my predecessor Scott, another Scott, was very focused on defining what is today a 350 million tonne resource with very clear, very simple, very precise, I suppose, logic around the deposit. We have about a 0.48% grade in that deposit. It's flat, it outcrops on the surface, it's very simple, there's no faulting, there's nothing there, and it's a super resource. I've kicked the dirt and it's there, it's soft, it's pretty much all in the weathered zone. So again, I'll come to that because that means a lot when it comes to developing projects. So I'm 6 weeks under the desk, and I suppose deliberate decision by the board to bring on a developer. My background, I started with BHP back in the early 90s in the coal fields. My background is largely bulk with coal and iron ore, and through that time I spent with BHP, but also with Thiess for 15 years, and in that time started a lot of new projects. I built a few mines from scratch, took them through approvals, took them through into development, through construction. So the board made a pretty deliberate decision, and it pivots the company at the moment to where we want to be, and that is taking what is this resource and actually taking it through the development and into the operation phase. So that's me. My recent sort of experience has pivoted out of the bulks into, I had a stint in mineral resources, looking through the lithium and those deposits at Mount Marion and Wodgina. Tough going, but obviously Chris made the right decision, and they're going great. And more recently had some time in Africa and Australia looking after the surface business for Parenti. Interestingly enough, the very recent, my last 2 years before I got tapped on the shoulder was helping some Indigenous groups up in the central Queensland Barwon Basin get little service businesses up and going and really getting those TOs up and away. So it is around people. It is around having the right people in the right jobs to actually take your project to where you want to go. And I think as we grow further, we'll bring certainly other people in that are going to help us through that journey. But a little bit about Critical Mineral Group. As I said, great vanadium resource. We are focused at producing, being one of the leading manufacturers of battery-grade vanadium that's electrolyte for vanadium batteries. I'll talk a little bit about what that means in the future, but we very much link to what is Queensland, what is Australia's targets around taking our renewable energy sources up to essentially 100%, I think, by 2050. Interesting, I'm not sure if you've looked at some of those targets, but 2050 is 100% renewable, but by 2032 it's 70%, and 2035 it's 80%. So the initial next year 10-year targets are enormous, and we fit right in the middle of that. Battery storage, obviously, and again, sorry if I'm going over things that you already know, but battery storage essentially makes renewable power baseload. That's what we're all about. And we feature heavily strongly in that picture. The amount of battery storage required when you look at some of the targets going forward is absolutely staggering. It's not only going to be vanadium, it will be every product, lithium. There's also, bromide, or sodium bromide. There's a lot of technology out there that is going to feature in the energy storage market, and they will all have a place. I often talk to people around, you're never going to stick a vanadium battery on your scooter or in your car. That's firmly for lithium, but vanadium is there to sort out grid scale stability, grid scale storage and support for industrial estates, for small communities, larger communities, industries, big business. So that's where we feature. Vanadium simply in the market is currently used for steel. 92% of the vanadium produced primarily in sort of China and South Africa, some in sort of South America, is into the alloy market, in the steel alloy market. And a very small proportion is starting to go into the energy storage. And I suppose that's where we're going to see the massive growth going forward in that market. And the Julia Creek Richmond area, which we're talking about, is and has huge resources of vanadium available, and at terrific grades and with low impurities, which makes it suitable to for the electrolyte for vanadium batteries. As I said before, my background's largely in coal and sort of iron ore, and developing projects all requires government support, whether it's through approvals or through grants or support. And the one thing I'm seeing in the vanadium space is a lot of support. It's absolutely terrific to see. It sort of certainly hasn't been my experience in the past, but there are numerous incentives, numerous grants that are being thrown towards vanadium as a industry, and that's really helping us through. And you see that sort of assistance going to happen through the approvals process and shepherding us along there. One of the things that really attracted me into the business was our shareholder base. We have call it a cornerstone in Idemitsu. Idemitsu took 35% of Critical Mineral Group, and that is a real, I suppose, sign. The sort of my experience with Japanese and investments is they don't do things in halves. There's certainly a lot of thought goes behind where they put their money and where they want to be. It's been quite open that the Japanese are looking, and certainly Idemitsu are pivoting away from their energy sort of coal side of the business into battery minerals. They've placed some interest in lithium and certainly a lot of interest into vanadium. They've put some cash into us, as well as Veco Group. Veco's it's a private company. So look, a little bit about the Linfield deposit that we are forging ahead. I suppose the one thing I'm trying to do as MD in the business is keep things very simple, keep things very focused on vanadium, and keep things grab the right partners along the way to help us get there and make sure that we know the critical path to development. We have a great resource, as I said before. It's terrific. Interestingly enough, for those sort of miners in the room, it sits about minus 20 down. It's in weathered, it's simple, it's soft, it's flat, there's no faulting. So I can say that the mining in here is going to be very simple and low cost. It's almost putting a rippertine through it, and that's how you're breaking. So you're not consuming lots of energy to break and size your material so that you can put it through your Benny process. We have, as I said before, a great location, Julia Creek. It's in sort of the middle of nowhere, but it's a great location. We sit right on the rail line. The main sort of road goes through there, so we've got a great town support in Julia Creek and Richmond. It's a very small shire, but they're certainly looking for developers in that area to be present, and there's a lot of support for our presence there on site. As I said before, the government is super supportive. They are throwing grants. We've got some grant applications in at the moment to help us through some of the study work and pilot plant testing, and that's going to be a great sign. And it's just recycling some of our capital, which is terrific. I said before, the vanadium that we have is about 0.48%, but it upgrades exceptionally well. It's one of those materials, as I said, you can break it down, you can separate it. The deposit is sort of limestone. It's an old ocean bed as floor, essentially, and the vanadium sits within the clay. So the separation of that limestone calcite and the clays is very easy, and that makes beneficiation from our 0.48 up to 1.5, and we're sort of heading to 2. Very simple. Some of the early testing that we're getting out of our beneficiation, just lab scale, bench scale testing is terrific. Only after sort of 3 or 4 tests, it's really upgrading exceptionally well. To the point, actually, where our resources define on, and I know it's a bit of detail, the resources define on the sequence is A, B, C, D, very simple, highly technical. We have not included A in the resource, and A has not been there because the head grade is sort of a little bit low. It's about 0.23. But out of all of the bench scale testing that we've done, we've thrown that in and said, well, let's just try, see how it goes. And it is the one that upgrades the greatest. So we're now looking to include that in the resource, which would take our 350 to something north of 500. But anyway, we'll work on that. Volume here is not a problem for CMG. The amount of volume that we're, in terms of resource, we're not going to go do more drilling for defining a larger resource. We don't need to. There's enough there. The drilling that we're doing, and we're actually just about to kick off another program actually today, is about collecting volume for our next scale of testing, and that's pilot scale testing to really show that bench scale can be reproduced at a larger scale and then beyond. So that's really encouraging for us. So from a mining perspective, terrific conditions. From a processing perspective, we are very much seeing some great results. All of the processing in this type of deposit, different to the VTM deposits. This is a sedimentary, simple, sedimentary soft friable in the weathered zone geology. Again, it's very simple, I suppose, the way I look at it. The technology used to process this is all off the bench, all off the shelf, sorry. It's very simple scrubbing and flotation off the shelf. It's very simple roasting and leaching, which is just sulfuric acid leaching off the shelf, and solvent extraction off the shelf, and precipitation off the shelf. It's all stuff that just bolts together and can be reproduced very well. It's just a matter of tweaking some of the levels within each of those to get the best extraction and recovery of your deposit. So really encouraged by that, which is why we're now sort of putting our investment into the more core to get volume for the pilot testing and a pilot testing program. Similarly, our scoping study is almost done, end of this month. It's showing some really encouraging results again, underwriting sort of our next step, which is pilot, pre-fees, BFS, and really investing in some of those approvals that we need to go. I know it was mentioned before around approvals. Our critical path for the development of this project is approvals, and it's important we grab the federal government and the state government, ensure they're totally aware of what we're doing. We start our ecological studies, start our water testing before the wet season this year, and that way we can sort of short circuit that whole process. But approvals are one of those things we're hoping that the Townsville Mineral Office, which has just been set up for critical minerals, is going to help shepherd us through. Ideally, we end up as a coordinator or prescribed project. That's in our sort of formation at the moment as to where we sit, but that's going to help us get through the phases and quickly into what we see as a high probability of construction in the in the next 2 years. So terrifically exciting in that front, and really I'm trying to parallel as much as we can to get there. Look, I won't go too much into the vanadium batteries, but I suppose I just want to touch on some of the things. I said before, there is room and space for battery tech storage of renewable energy and provision of grid stability across, whether it's a lithium battery, vanadium battery. There is so much demand that it's not funny. I looked at some of the stats. Our mine alone, if we're running at about a 4 million tonne per annum operation, will service about 1 gigawatt hour for what is Queensland's baseload, nighttime baseload of 72. So we're a fraction, and that's just one state, one mine. So you can see how many mines and tonnes of vanadium, if you look at them all being sort of vanadium storage battery, that's going to be required. So there's no storage. Vanadium batteries are out there. They're in use across the world. I'm not sure how many there are. There's sort of 250 or 60 of these batteries being built. The largest one's about an 800 megawatt hour battery in Delhi in China. They're building them in Japan and Korea at the moment. They're servicing communities. The one in Dalian's servicing about 200,000 people. Port Pirie down in South Australia there's one being built down there. It's about 8 megawatt hour, and it's on the back of a solar project. So these things are real, they're safe, they are reusable. The great thing about vanadium batteries is that they don't degrade. They're not flammable, but they don't degrade. They are 30 plus year lifespan. The thing that'll likely rust away is the bolts and the membranes in there, so that's a changeable item, but they are there for grid scale capability and use. We position, as CMG, want to position ourselves as a premium leading producer of high quality, high purity vanadium electrolyte for that battery storage. So that means we will produce pentoxide on site and look to produce electrolyte in the location that it's best suited, and that could be Australia for the vanadium demand here or elsewhere across the world where it's required. That's our target, and that's our strategy going forward. Some really good news coming up forward. I've probably touched on a fair bit of it, but we're cracking on with pilot scale over the next 3 to 4 months. The pre-fees BFS is we're cracking on that at the same time frame. Our electrolyte strategy is getting put together in Q4, Q1, and that's a fair bit of work in itself. So we're I won't even tell you what our market cap is because I think we're quite low. It's a great opportunity. We are around a 10 million market cap at the moment, and it's something certainly that has opportunity to grow as we get out there. 6 weeks under the desk, terrifically excited at the moment. There's a lot of work, as someone said earlier on, to push these projects forward, but super excited at the moment. So that's about me. Thank you.